Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever had vulnerable sex? Yep, you heard me right. Have you ever had vulnerable sex? Do you even know what vulnerable sex is? Well, that's what we're going to discuss today. Today I'm going to talk about vulnerable sex, what it means, and how it can actually have a huge impact on your relationship, right? How it can really help to turn things around in your relationship, not just in the bedroom, but in your relationship in general, because vulnerable sex affects more than the actual act of having sex. It has a lot to do with confidence and trust, things that can affect other parts of your relationship also. So that's what we're going to discuss today. All right, so this today's discussion comes from a conversation that I had with several women months ago. I would say maybe about a year ago or months ago. And I was looking back in my notes, and as I was preparing for what I was going to be discussing today, kind of hit me, reflect on me, and so I coined it vulnerable sex because, and you'll see where I'm going with this, that is exactly what it is. So, in this conversation that I was having with these women, I realized that something was pretty consistent, and that is a lot of these women, if not all of them actually, were really holding back when it came to sex. And and this wasn't necessarily with a stranger, right? This was with their boyfriend or their husband or whatever the situation is, and they were holding back when it came to sex. And so I was curious. Obviously, I was in a coaching session, and I was curious, and so I wanted to ask. So why are you holding back? What's going on here? Why are you not fully opening up, which is what I consider vulnerable sex to be? You're really just opening up, no pun intended, opening up to the person that you are engaged in sex with. And one of the reasons why they were not opening up is because they felt that it will give their partner, right? That opening up would give their partner a sense of control over them, right? So they were holding back sexually because they felt if they completely just put themselves out there, that was in some way it would give their partner control over them. So let me be a little bit more explicit while being somewhat decent at the same time while still trying to explain this. So when I say opening up, it means that they didn't want their partners to fully engage with them in some sexual ways, in some sexual positions, or whatever the case is, right? Because they felt like, and they didn't want to express themselves sexually in some sort of way because they didn't want their partner to know how they were really feeling. So let me get even more specific. It would be instances, for example, where they will not vocally and they would not verbalize how they really felt their partner was performing during sex. Now, it was all high marks, so to speak, right? High marks, good marks, in that their partner was pleasing them. They were being sexually satisfied, but they were holding back and they didn't want their partner to know that they were sexually satisfying them, right? So, in other words, they weren't being vulnerable, they weren't opening up, they were hiding it. And then these women confessed to me, every single one of them, that one of the reasons why they were holding back is because they didn't want to make him swell headed, right? No pun intended, right? They didn't want to make him feel cocky or whatever the case is, feel overconfident. Like, like you're the man and you're doing such a great job and all that type of stuff. So they were holding back and not being vulnerable. Well, that is because they did not want him to be what they consider to be overconfident or to be cocky. So they didn't fully express themselves. And then also they didn't allow themselves to sexually engage in certain types of ways. Not that they were not comfortable performing certain acts or doing certain things or being in certain sexual positions, but they didn't want to put themselves in those positions because again they didn't want this guy to have a certain sense of dominance over them because then again they felt like they were really exposing themselves, putting themselves out there for oh my God, this person's really getting into my feelings, so to speak, and didn't want to make themselves that vulnerable. So they were constantly holding back. And so I asked them, so do you enjoy these sexual encounters then? Because they sound more like encounters to me than intimacy. Do you enjoy those sexual encounters with your partners, right? With your husband or your boyfriend or your whatever the case is. Do you enjoy those sexual encounters? And a lot of times it was no. It was no because they spent a lot of time not wanting to, vocalize how they felt, trying to suppress, whether it was moaning or whatever the case is, trying to suppress actually how they felt, that they were more engaged in controlling the balance or the power of sex than actually engaged in having sex. And so, although they were physically present in the moment, in a lot of ways they were mentally absent because they had to keep their mental right focused on not letting this person know truly and exactly how I feel. I hope that's making sense to you, right? So in other words, they weren't really being vulnerable. So what I'm saying is for you to really enjoy sex, penetration, and when I say sex, I'm talking the whole shebang, right? For you to really enjoy it, you have to be able to have vulnerable sex with your partner. Obviously, you have to be comfortable with someone to really expose yourself like that, to open up yourself like that, right? And to really be vulnerable like that means that there must be trust and you must have confidence that the person will respect you in a lot of ways. And that's why I said vulnerable sex can help to build trust and confidence in a relationship. So, if you're vulnerable to someone and they, and you're able to engage in vulnerable sex with them, then you both able to build up a level of confidence in your relationship that you could take from the bedroom to the living room to the wherever the situation is. It goes with you, and the person knows that you trust them because you make yourself vulnerable to them, and hopefully they're trustworthy as well, right? Which is why I think some people are holding back. It's because there's this whole idea of trustworthiness. Although, a lot of these women were holding back simply because they didn't want to make the guy swell-headed, they didn't want to make him cocky or overconfident or whatever the case is, so they held back. So, if you're engaged in having sex and part of what you're doing is about holding back, then mentally you cannot be completely present. And if you're not completely present mentally, then you're not really engaged in vulnerable sex. And vulnerable sex is the best sex. And if you've never had vulnerable sex, then obviously I would recommend you try it. But obviously you would have to be, I think to be vulnerable also, you've got to be in somewhat of at least a committed relationship with someone, because it means that you are putting a lot of trust out there and you're opening up yourself to someone in all different types of ways. But for people who are trying to be in a happy, loving relationship, married, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever your situationship is, right? If you are trying to be in those relationships and you're trying to be happy, then you can't be so concerned about, well, I don't want to make my partner swell headed or whatever the case is, that you can't actually be there, be present in the moment and enjoy each other and build that bond. No, yes, relationships are more than just sex. It takes more than sex to keep a relationship together. But I guarantee you, I've seen so many couples who have separated and gone their separate ways because of an absence of not just sex. Sometimes they were having sex, maybe not very often, I realize in a lot of cases, but they were not having good sex. It was more of like a little quick up hooky with somebody that you hardly know. It was very uncomfortable, kind of let's get it over with type of situation. They were not really engaged in really good quality sex. So vulnerable sex means that you're going to open up to your partner. You're going to tell them how they make you feel and vice versa. They're going to tell you how they're feeling. You got to be able to communicate in the moment, which is why it's great for communication, to be able to talk to each other and work yourself through that whole process. Don't be afraid to say what you want in any type of situation like that. You've got to be able to do that type of stuff. So you've gotta really be wanting to open up with your partner like that, want to be really engaged with them, and that would make a huge difference. So let me know what you think about this whole idea of vulnerable sex, and have you ever had vulnerable sex? Please leave it in the comments. Please leave your responses in the comments below. Don't forget to turn on your post notifications. Don't forget to hit the like button and share the videos. It does help the channel grow, so I really appreciate that. And until next time, I want you to think about vulnerable sex and let me know, right? Leave it in the comments. Peace.